You've joined Prophecy Talk for analysis of world events and unfolding Bible prophecy, brought to light by prophecy expert and author Erika Grey of www.erikagray.com.
On February 11, 2013, Pope Benedict, sitting on his red and gold throne, dressed in his red robe, surrounded by robed Catholic clergy, uttered his resignation. The news shocked the airwaves, as this was the first pope to step down in 600 years since the Middle Ages. The same day, the BBC reported that lightning struck the dome of St. Peter's Basilica. Adding another dose of mysticism, 13 days later, the white smoke billowing from the Vatican chimney pipe revealed that a new pope was elected by the conclave of cardinals on March 13, 2013. Cardinal Jorge Mario Bergoglio, Archbishop of Buenos Aires, Argentina, takes the name Francis, a 13th century Catholic saint, and becomes Pope Francis. In biblical numerology, 13 and 11 represent negative numbers associated with the horned devil and rebellion. In Revelation, it is chapter 13 that the Apostle John stands on the sands of the sea, witnesses the Antichrist beast rise out of the waters with 7 heads, 10 horns, and written across one of the heads the names of blasphemy. Revelation 13 tells us that the false prophet performs miracles and advocates for the Antichrist. It is in the 13th chapter we are given the numerical riddle identifying the Antichrist by the number of his name, and his number is 666. The false prophet breathes life into the image of the beast and causes all to worship it. This takes us to our next number. Pope Francis is now the 266th Pope, which is 1/6 shy of 666, and 66 represents Nebuchadnezzar's idolatrous golden image in the book of Daniel, which Babylonians were forced to worship. It was 6 cubits high and 6 cubits wide, and foreshadows Revelation 13's idol. Incidentally, the practice of Satanism and the founding of the Church of Satan began in 1966. In Satanism, both 13 and 11 are numbers which identify the devil. Numerology is an inherent part of Satanism. The number 11 represents the sign of Aries, the 11th sign of the zodiac, and its symbol of the water bearer, who is represented by Belial, a name of the devil mentioned 16 times in the Old Testament and 1 time written by Paul in his letter to the Corinthians. Men or women who committed the most evil, rebellious deeds were called children of, sons or daughters of Belial. Aries is also symbolized by the ram, which lines up with the 2-horned lamb of Revelation, which is a young ram. Jesus is depicted in the Bible as the lamb and the false prophet as the young ram. The number 13 is long associated with the devil and is used throughout Satanism. The tarot death card is the 13th card. The sudden change in papal leadership and the mystical details have many evangelicals wondering if Pope Francis is the false prophet. Others reference the prophecy of popes, which states that there will be a last pope, Peter the Roman, who will help usher in Armageddon. The beast who rises from the sea has 10 horns, which are 10 kings. The little horn of Daniel is the Antichrist, and all 11 horns represent heads of countries and political leaders. The false prophet has 2 horns like a lamb. Like Jesus, who is represented by a lamb, Revelation's lamb with horns signifies a religious leader, but one that is in sheep's clothing. Horns in the Revelation and the book of Daniel symbolize leaders of countries. The pontiff fits the role of the false prophet because his first horn represents his leadership of the Catholic Church. His second horn depicts the Pope as the sovereign of Vatican City State. Vatican City was established as an independent state in 1929 by the Lateran Treaty. Vatican City is the world's smallest country, and it functions like any other country, even issuing its own coins. In 2002, Vatican City began issuing euros as its official currency. It is a microstate, which means it lies within a larger country within the European Union. The head of Vatican City is the Pope. Thus, the two horns can represent his being the head of the vast Catholic Church and of his country, Vatican City. The two horns can also signify the false prophet's leadership of his church and his position with the Antichrist. The false prophet's two horns, in addition to the 11 horns of the 10 kings and little horn of the Antichrist, gives us a total of 13 horns. That in total represents the beast, which again is the number of the devil. The beast rises from the sea, while the false prophet is a beast who rises from the earth. Aletheia, the worldwide Catholic network from Rome, reported that Pope Francis is a pope, quote, from the ends of the earth, end of quote. Coincidence? We will now take a break, and we'll be back in a moment for a continuation of Is Pope Francis the False Prophet?
Jesus closes the book of Revelation, declaring, "Behold, I am coming quickly." John 20:21 records, "These things are written, that you may believe that Jesus is the Christ, the Son of God, and that believing you may have life in his name." John 3:15 promises that whoever believes in him should not perish, but have everlasting life. Trust in Jesus today. He lives, and he is returning. You're listening to Prophecy Talk with Erika Grey.
Erika Grey here, returning with our special report today. Is Pope Francis the false prophet? Pope Francis is 76 years old, born in 1936 in Buenos Aires to Italian parents who migrated to Argentina. The Pope speaks fluent Italian because of his Italian heritage. He obtained a degree in chemistry, philosophy, and theology. He was also a teacher, teaching at colleges. On the 13th of December 1969, he was ordained a priest. On the 13th day during the month, he is ordained a priest and elected pope. Cardinal Jorge Mario chose the name Francis after Francis of Assisi, who founded the Franciscan order and who devoted himself to a life of poverty while preaching repentance. Francis saw a vision, and afterwards the stigmata appeared on his hand. He believed that nature itself was the mirror of God. He called all creatures his brothers and sisters and even preached to the birds. He is often portrayed with a bird in his hand. In 1979, Pope John Paul II named Francis the patron of ecology. According to Fox News, the Pope picked Francis because he was immediately inspired to take the name of St. Francis of Assisi because of his work for peace and the poor. In addition to being the first Latin American Pope and Francis in the pontificate, he is also the first Jesuit Pope. Jesuits are known for their free-thinking, intellectual contributions, and are known to be teachers. There are Jesuit-run universities, and they have their own presses and publish a variety of academic books. Jesuits are academically orientated. Jesuits in Latin America received a bad reputation because of their development of liberation theology. It was a highly controversial movement condemned by Pope John Paul II. Liberation theology is essentially Christianized Marxism. The term, first coined in 1973, proposed that the Gospels demanded that the Church concentrate its efforts on liberating the world's people from poverty and oppression. They adopted Marxist ideas, supported revolutionary movements, and criticized traditional church institutions. Essentially, liberation theology is a form of Christian communism and based on the view that the teachings of Jesus Christ compel Christians to support communism as the ideal governmental system. Christian communists believe that the apostles practiced communism and that it was taught by Jesus, who they hail as the first Marxist. When Pope Francis was provincial superior of the Jesuits in Argentina, he was accused of not having protected two priests who were kidnapped, and it was suggested that he was partly responsible for the priests' prolonged detention. The human rights group Center for Legal and Social Studies in Argentina actually opposed Francis's selection as pope. CNN also reported that it was even alleged that Pope Francis lied under oath during an investigation into the theft of babies from prisoners during the dictatorship. Francis testified that he never knew about any baby stealing until after the dictatorship had fallen. An interviewed victim claims that Francis knew about it at the time. She also said she had written to Francis about it. These stories hint of a possible dark side to Pope Francis. Pope Francis has gained notoriety for humility and the shunning of the pomp and circumstance that go with being pope, such as his refusal to wear the red mozzetta, standing to receive the cardinals versus sitting on the papal throne, and taking the minibus with the other cardinals instead of the papal car. This may even more so be evidence of a maverick, which is not uncommon for a free-thinking intellect to act. If he begins to produce miracles, we might very well have on our hands the false prophet, which only time will tell. A pope would need to be a maverick to team with the Antichrist. And it is not geopolitically unforeseeable, given the institutional political seat of the Antichrist, to sit with and partner with a pontiff and for them to form a special relationship. The Antichrist will abolish all religion. The possibility exists for an evil pope to condone the destruction and persecution of the church as he campaigns for the Antichrist. The next question is, how will this pope continue where other popes have left off in their influence in the European Union? The pope, in that he is a Jesuit, will most likely be more active than previous popes in relation to the politics of the Union. The Guardian named him the radical from Flores, who will reshape the Catholic Church. Domenico Bresci, a priest who studied with Bergoglio in the 1950s, and later worked with him in Flores, and who is now an advisor in the government's Religious Affairs Bureau and a prominent figure in the leftist liberation theology movement, said the new pope was not a person to take half measures. Bresci said the world should brace for a transformation of one of its oldest and most conservative religions. He added he is going to have an impact on the world. He'll change the power structure of the church and challenge the pomp of the Vatican. Bergoglio demands discipline. When he was made Vicar General of Flores in 1992, he insisted that the church authorities reveal properties they owned. When he became Archbishop, he reshuffled the clerics who opposed him. Those who know him said Pope Francis is likely to do the same in the Vatican by clearing out the dominant old guard of cardinals. Slowly and strategically, he will introduce changes as he becomes more powerful and others become weaker, Bresci predicted. He also said the transformation is going to be the biggest in a half a century or more. He will be strict on finance. There will be zero tolerance of sexual abuse and homosexual liaisons by priests. This is his style, It comes from Flores, Bresci is quoted to have said. The Commission of the Bishops' Conference of the European Community, made up of bishops who examine EU policy and legislation from a Catholic perspective and maintain a regular dialogue with the European Union institutions, stated on Pope Francis's election, quote, "At this critical time, when there is deep confusion about Europe's future, it may be an opportune moment for the new pontiff to inject fresh enthusiasm into the search for a vision of Europe." They later went on to say, "We feel sure that the successor of Peter will recognize with pride what has been achieved together by the European nations and encourage European political leaders, and incidentally all of us at Comique, to continue with solidarity and respect for subsidiarity on the path towards unity and diversity for all within the European family." End of quote. Unity in diversity is the official motto of the European Union, and it is right out of the tenets of European federalism, which sprang from Catholic thought. It is the wine in the cup of the whore spoken of in Revelation chapter 17, which my book discusses in detail. If this pope is not the false prophet, which time will reveal, we can at least expect Pope Francis, the Jesuit pope, to embrace federalist ideology and help lead the governments and peoples of the world to its final one-world destination and further have its influence on the evolving European Union.
Thank you for listening today. Tune into Prophecy Talk next week with author and prophecy expert Erika Grey. In the meantime, be sure to visit Erika Grey's website at www.erikagray.com.